Continuing with the section of Lech Lecha, we're in Breshit Yudalad, the 14th chapter of Genesis, Pasuk Dalad, the fourth verse. Shteim, two, with a mapach. A mapach is a note that gathers something from before and narrows it to a more focused point. And again, normally when you would read a sentence, you would never separate between Shteim and Esrei, 2 and 10, which means 12. But here, the notes assigned to each word tell us that we have to divide these two up. So there has to be a significance to the 2 and a significance to the 10, which is again something that is unique to this parish that I really don't think you're going to find anywhere else. Number one, the two initial...
Just by the Hebrew alone, without this parish, even it's divided into units and 10. Like in English, we would say 12. But here, Shtayim and Esrei, so it's already divided.
But Jeff's saying there's two separate notes, which means
which means we have a significance to 2 and 10.
Right, but I'm saying that's already sort of inherent in it, the way Hebrew works. You're already making the units and 10.
Yeah, but it's so distinct from the English that has a word for 12.
Right.
If it was 24, you would say there's still,
Yeah.
Anyways, let's continue.
For 2 initial years of subjugation by the foreign powers, there were still forms of limited freedom, but even that was fading away, as indicated by the shape of the reading word. So, the freedom that they had at the beginning became narrowed down. The first 2 years were bad and getting worse. Esrei, following 10. Thus, number 2, thus the conditions during the following 10 years became increasingly worse, and by tyrannical methods, the rulers tried to take full control, as shown by the directional shape of the reading word. So with Pashta, they become the ones who are in charge. They're the ones who are in the focus. Shana, with a katon, with a 2-part note. Year, number 3. Each successive year, new regulations and laws were introduced. These were markedly oppressive and effectively eliminated all freedoms, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading word. So each year was distinct from the year before, and there is a better and a worse, so it just progressively got worse each year. Hence the 2-part note. Avdu, with a tipcha, backwards looking note, so focuses things on what happens before, with a pause slightly afterward. They served, number 4. Under those circumstances of absolute rule, nations hoped for improvements, and they served with obedience, paying contributions to the vassals with nothing in return, as referred backwards by the directional shape of the reading word. So they served, and that was the end. Nothing came out of it. So hence the pause after the tipcha. Et kedor la'omer, with kedor la'omer, with the stabilizing et nachta. With all efforts, they tried to keep the peace with kedor la'omer, who applied the most cruel oppressions, as stressed by the stabilizing shape of the reading word. So he is the force that is binding all of these vassal states into one. So he despite the fact that it is a tyrannical conglomeration, he's the one who's holding it together. So he is the stabilizing force.
Isn't one of these guys Nimrod of the 4 and 5 kings? They don't call him Nimrod, but
they don't. Yeah. Ushlosh Esrei, and here you notice because the 2 words have only one reading note, and 13 is now we're not separating out the 2 and the 10, where the 13 is all together because it's only got one note.
And 13 is Echad is 13.
The existing circumstances motivated the subdued chieftains to hold consultations and develop a common strategy for revolt. This had happened, and 13 years after losing the sovereignty, unrest began, as denoted by the directional shape of the reading word. So, this is a forward-looking note. It's lightly connected to what had happened from before. They were lightly connected to the subjugation that they were, and they're looking forward to what they're going to do, which is revolting. Shana, year, with a tipcha, backwards looking, pause after it. Number 7, each year as the oppression continued to get worse, it cemented the revolt to become stronger and more determined, as suggested by the closing shape of the directional reading. So with every year's anniversary and every year's new rules that were worse and worse, then people were getting more and more willing and determined to revolt. Maradu, they rebelled, with the stabilizing Sof Pasuk. When the oppressed nations had assessed their preparations as workable, together they rebelled under the leadership of the combined staff of their alliance. So he's reading in some extra detail that doesn't seem to be in the word maradu, they rebelled. He is doing it on a contextual basis rather than, I think, the basis of the word itself. And he's finding stability in the fact that they group together, and that's really driven by the previous sentences that tell us the groupings.
What note is on Maradu?
Sof Pasuk.
And that's it. Did Sof Pasuk
so-
ever have a note under, or that's
Sof Pasuk, the makaf, the little note that tells you the accented syllable, is the actual reading note, and the colon at the end, the two dots, is actually structural and added later, and is not in fact a note.
So is that considered a note? That makaf is a note?
That makaf at the end of the sentence is in fact the note.
But on that page where all the notes are, is that a note there, or what?
So on the page where we describe what the notes are,
Yeah.
that's what he.
That's not in his book. That's only
It's in the Breshit. So as we read through the sentence, we're going to notice that the phrase Shtei Mesrei Shana is going to have a little pause after it. Things start to get bad, get even worse, and each year is a dividing mark. And yet, in each one of those, avdu, that they continue to try to make it work, and that's what happens on the one side. Again, you get a pause after the word avdu, et kedar la'omer, and he's the one who's holding this whole scheme together. Ushlosh esrei shana, and in the 13th year, that again, all of the things that have happened in the Reish in the first half of the pasuk start to unravel. So we see by the groupings with the pauses that those features are overemphasized. Shtei Mesrei Shana Avdu et Omer Ushlosh Esrei Shana Maradu. And hopefully that stands out a little more when we overemphasize the pauses.
In the 13th year, they rebelled. It almost sounds like they rebelled for 13. Is it 12 years they worked and then 13 years they rebelled?
So the Zohar is very particular on this. It says 12 years they worked for him, 13th year they rebelled, and in the 14th year he came and counterattacked.
Because it really should be ubeshanaha maradu. So the fact that it's phrased this way is weird. Because almost you can make it think that they worked for 12 and rebelled for 13.
So read the alternative commentary addresses that directly.
Where's the alternative?
We're gonna come to it in a second. Balaturim draws a parallel with Chizkiyahu, where also the Jews managed to repel someone who was invading them in the 13th year. And we have alternative on page 50, halfway down the page. 12 years they worked on their theories to deny heaven. They advocated a fight with God and his laws. They tried to engage in a struggle with Kedar La'omer, the creator of the globe of the world.
Kadur
Ha'aretz.
Why Omer? Where do you get Omer? Like, what's the... You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Kadur, I guess.
I mean, other than the fact that grain comes from
The earth. Yeah. Omer is like something you heap up, you get more and more and more, like a sheaf, you know.
Yeah.
Like when we count the Omer, it's, you know.
I'm not quite sure where that derivation is coming from.
You don't know where to
And
divide it. It
13
could be Kadur,
Kadur
Le, Omer, or La'am. Maybe the Reish is just, no, the Reish has to be part of it, I don't know.
Sorry, please continue.
Yeah. And 13 years they rebelled, in the open, propagating their ideas publicly, rebelling against Ko, Kape, the name of God. 13 plus 12 is 25, is Ko, which explains for a reprisal compared to 17:7, Hayesh Hashem b'kirvenu im ayin, is succeeded by Vayavo Amalek. So when you have a public denial of God, you have a physical demonstration of something that affirms what will happen if that is the way that you treat the world.
Wait a minute, well, Ko is a name for Hashem?
Ka. Ka.
What?
Just Ka. The word Ka.
That isn't the name of Hashem.
Sure it is.
Ka? Yeah, isn't it? What do you
So
mean?
no. Ko is in
Ko Amar, like. Yeah, Hashem, it's like Hashem
no.
maybe, but where's Ko Hashem?
So it's so when Moshe wants to look prophetically, to look prophetically at the Egyptian who he's killed.
He looked Ko V'Ko.
Vayifen Ko V'Ko.
Okay, but
So he looks into this. He looks prophetically at what God would see his past was, and what God would see his future was. So Vayifen Ko V'Ko is using God's sense of putting prophecy into the world in order to see what has happened and what would happen. And that's why all of the prophecies are Ko Amar Hashem. God says it's going to be this way prophetically. So that is an aspect of God who sees prophetically history.
But it's Ko Amar Hashem, it's not Ko Amar. Ko Amar, that would be God's
But okay,
thing. Whatever.
But so this is the aspect of God that sees the past and sees the future.
Which is like your kid up there.
So
So just give it in your own words, like what's the background with the 4 and 5 kings? Whose side are we on? Are we on anybody's side? They're all bad, aren't they? Nimrod was not a good guy.
okay, so we're going to pause the tape for a minute.
Well, maybe they want to hear this too.